Thank you so much, Kathy McMorris Rogers, Mike, Danica Campos, and High Street Insurance. I'd like to take just a pause for a second because the story he just shared has impacted my life personally, and I think other people in the room. We talk about what leadership is and what that entails, and Mike is an example of that. A couple of things that intertwined in my life was that processing water reuse facility that now is over a $200 million facility and does an incredible value add for agriculture by making products better that we can ship out and earn more is been going from the 90s because of the vision like Mike Poulsen and a bunch of other people. Those folks are also they're also getting a bit older in their retired portion of their life. Folks like myself in the 50s, people like you in your 30s and 40s, we're going to get a chance to stand on the shoulders of people like Mike, and I want to give a special thanks to all the people in the past that have led the Tri-Cities and the agriculture community, Benton and Franklin counties in particular, to where it is and where it will continue. Thank you. And now we're going to move into the final Ag Hall of Fame award. And I'm so impressed by the sacrifice and hard work of these early leaders in our ag industry. This particular category honors individuals who've had a significant influence on the development of agriculture and who have unselfishly served their communities. And please help me welcome my friend, Flo Sayre, as the family inducts Fred and Lura Harris into the Ag Hall of Fame with the 2006 Wheatland Bank Pioneer Award. Flo?
Well, this is quite an honor for me and for the family. Fred and Lura Harris, better known to most of us, and me especially as Grandma and Grandpa, were icons in the community. Grandpa was not even a year old when his parents loaded them all on a train, one of the earliest trains after the Golden Spike and the East and West was connected, loaded them and their meager belongings onto the train in Iowa to move to Pasco. At the time it was Ainsworth where they were moving. The family settled in town, and shortly thereafter, his father abandoned Fred and his mother and headed back east to where he came from. His mother took on jobs of cleaning and cooking and mending and sewing, anything that would bring in a little bit of income to help them help care for her young son and to merely survive. His mother eventually remarried to Grandpa Stormont. Grandma was actually born in Pasco. Her father, Grandpa Wallace, homesteaded where the current Pasco Airport is today. They moved a lot since he was a traveling doctor. So much of her childhood and youth was spent in eastern Washington towns like Rosalia, Oakdale, and Spokane. But he went as far as Colorado and into the Willamette Valley, finally settling in the Everett area. Well, you might ask, how did they meet with that kind of a lifestyle? Grandma's father hired Grandpa as a young man, a handsome young man, to row her across the river to see her sister in Kennewick. And the rest is history. So if I can deviate just a little bit from the normal program, would all of the Harris family members please stand? What a legacy they've left. And this is only a small portion of the Harris family. So one more thing. Mom, can somebody help you stand? My mom, the last of the children of Fred and Lura, will be 100 in May.
Mom was pretty much a homemaker. We lived on a farm. We had a dairy with lots of cows. Took particular pride in all of the animals we had. My dad was a member of the irrigation district and the co-op, and Mom supported him in everything he did.
During the war period, the federal government came and told him they wanted this property where he was out at where Big Pasco sits today to build a munitions plant for the war. Grandpa couldn't be in the service even though he was very patriotic. He had a hearing problem from a very young age, so he couldn't do the service. So he agreed to give this place up, and they told him, you go find something else you want and we'll make it work. We'll trade you. So he would ride his horse up and down the river early in the morning, late in the evening, find the warm spots and the cold spots, and that's how he ended up settling out on the west end of Court Street. One thing about Grandma that didn't get touched on, it didn't matter who it was, Grandma loved her flowers. She loved them. People would drive by and they would literally stop to take pictures. Grandpa always wanted the world to be a friendly place. I don't know him to ever have had a prejudice. Everybody was the same.
Grandpa was instrumental in passing the legislation to get the mandatory testing for Banks disease after he had to kill a bunch of his cattle, and the vaccinations. I think that's pretty important. Oh, he was a really hard worker, and he was friendly and honest, and he was always learning and teaching and generous to a fault.
It never ceases to amaze me that Grandpa came out here as a small child. He's flown on an airplane and seen the man on the moon and all the technology that came along before he passed. My mind can't even get around some of those things, to think that all of the progression he saw across the country and around the world in that period of time.
Good evening, everyone. As the name implies, Wheatland Bank has very deep roots in agriculture, and the most important part is that commitment has never wavered. And on behalf of us at Wheatland Bank, it is my true honor to award this award to the family of Fred and Lura. Thank you.
And we're going to do a little thing down here. Everybody down over here. Thank you for coming.
I couldn't have done anything without my family, and I'm very proud of all of them.
Yeah, they're going to present, so if you guys want to come up and say a few words.
Our family has a lot of memories, not so much of anything else, but we would like to share some memories of Grandma and Grandpa with you. So two of my cousins, Ethel Knopp and Lorene Fleshman, are here to share with you.
Have you ever discovered the miracle and power in planting a tiny seed? I am going to tell you a story Grandpa told me when I was living with him during the last 5 years of his life. Grandpa was born April 9th, 1887. He was only months old when his father left their home and never came back. Again, during his growing up years, his mother took Grandpa to her parents' home to live for a while. When it seemed his father would not be returning, she moved Grandpa and herself into Pasco to create a home for the two of them. She worked hard doing laundry, ironing, sewing, housekeeping to support them. When Grandpa was 6 years old, he saw his mother working so hard, he wanted to do something to help out. he saw an empty lot close to their home. After asking around the neighborhood to see if he could use the empty lot to plant a garden, the answer was yes. He even got help clearing the area, working the ground, and getting it ready to plant seeds. This turned out to be a successful adventure for Grandpa. He was able to provide vegetables from his garden with plenty for his mother and himself. There was enough extra he was able to share with neighbors. This experience was when he discovered the wonder and love of putting seeds in the dirt, watching over them with care, weeding, and water. Those seeds would sprout, grow, and eventually become a harvest. Grandpa repeated this gardening adventure the next year and the next. He continued his gardening year after year until the year he passed at the age of 100. Grandpa never grew up on a farm. He learned a lot by doing. Among many character traits, Grandpa had a zest for life. He had a lot of fun growing garden, farming, fishing, and hunting, while at the same time took it all very seriously. I would describe Grandpa and his life's work not as a job to do to make a living. For him, it was a passion and joy. He was innovative and constantly thinking of how to make things better. Not only did Grandpa and Grandma love their farming and gardening, their seed of passion was passed on to each of their children. Each child carried the torch and passed it on to many of their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren in one facet or another. Planting seeds is a beautiful metaphor for life. It is a most wonderful thing to plant seeds of truth, honesty, goodness, kindness, generosity, and love. This is the other kind of garden that Grandpa planted in my heart. May you too find the joy in planting seeds.
Growing up next door to Grandma and Grandpa had many perks. On Sunday nights, we would go and spend with Grandma and Grandpa eating popcorn while watching Walt Disney, and we did that a lot. During the summers, I had the privilege of helping Grandpa in the garden. When I was young, he would let me carry the bucket for him whether we were picking cukes, tomatoes, or other vegetables. Grandpa freely gave information regarding the plants, the weeds, or whatever I needed to know. As I grew up, he would help me to do the planting and picking, and every morning he would be out in the garden weeding and making sure I was doing it right. We would pick cukes for pickling, and sometimes we would get more big ones than necessary. He would tell me that there was no reason for getting so many big ones and that we needed to be more careful about missing so many. Although sometimes, I think Grandpa missed some too, but we would never tell him that. He was still picking cucumbers into his late 90s with his hoe in his hand so he could get up and down. Grandpa was the best melon picker. He could tap the melons and tell by the sound that it was ripe. Out in the melon patch, he would pick them and we would pick them up and so they could be taken to the stand. Every so often he would have to break one and then we got to eat the heart out, and that was really yummy. Grandpa, he so enjoyed watching the bridge being built. He would watch out the window or stand out by the garden watching progress. He had his little camera and took many pictures, which were compiled into an album. The foreman on the job made Grandpa the special superintendent. He even had the opportunity to be lowered down in a bucket inside one of the piers. What an experience that was. He continually talked about it. Grandpa made working in the garden fun, and I will treasure all of those memories.
These are some of the other recollections from some of the other cousins. From our cousin Glenn Knopp. Fred Harris, whom I knew as Grandpa Harris, was one of several men who inspired me as a young person. He wasn't really my grandpa, but 3 of my dad's sisters and one of his brothers were married to Grandpa's children. So they had many double cousins, aunts and uncles who also called him Grandpa. I lived in Puyallup from 56 to 66, and almost weekly we would see Bill and Clara at their home in the veterinary clinic over there. Once or twice a year, we would travel to Eastern Washington, and Pasco was one of our stops. Grandpa Harris lived next to Uncle Wallace and Lucille on Court Street, so I would get to see him often at the fruit stand next door, or ride along with him and Wallace when they delivered produce to the stores, or even at a family reunion, what much we have here today. He told great stories about when he was young, and most of the local children were Native Americans. One story I particularly enjoyed was when he and his friend would ride a canoe out to the island before the Columbia was dammed up and hunt geese with their .22 rifles. They would bring the geese back to the local businesses and sell them for enough money to buy more ammunition so they could go hunting again. In 1966, my family moved to Eastern Washington, and we visited Pasco much more frequently. It was always a treat to stop and pick up fresh sweet corn, cantaloupe, melons, and so forth when we came to visit. Many memories were made here, and I'm glad to hear Fred and Lura are being honored in the Ag Hall of Fame. And from my cousin Dallas. When I was 8 or 9 years old, my dad, Alvin, decided to grow melons on Court Street Place. Grandpa was our guide and counsel on the project. My job was to help plant the melons. Grandpa came over to show me how to plant melons from seed in hills. I think he made the hills and dropped the seed. 4 or 5 seeds per hill. He would take 3 steps, make a hill, and plant 4 or 5 seeds. Repeat. 3 steps, 4 or 5 hills, and plant the seeds. So we went until we got the job done. I still plant melons that way today. Seems like we had more melons than we could ever possibly eat or sell, but we sure enjoyed the ones that we did. My brothers Dean, Burton, and I were invited to go fishing with Grandpa up at the Potholes one time. He drove us up in Grandpa's old Chevy too. Grandpa had all the gear, tackle, bait, and poles, and I remember we were about to get out of the car at the Potholes fishing area when Grandpa hollered out, "Keep your eyes peeled out for rattlesnakes." We fished all day, never saw a single snake, thankfully, but as far as fishing went, I think we were nearly skunked that day too. We did bring home a little catfish that we dropped into the cow trough. From another cousin from Aunt Lucille's, one of Aunt Lucille's sons, Lawrence, he said, Grandpa and Grandma Harris, known as Mom and Pop, within the families of their children, were my near mythical figures in our extended family universe. They built actually, a mythical Garden of Eden they called the Diversity Dairy. That's the one that you saw in the video. It was known to us younger descendants by folklore tales and an aged photo or two in the dusty album or hanging on the wall in the house of an aunt or an uncle or a great aunt, great uncle. Pop and Mom were founders of the farming dynasty in the Pasco area. All subsequent farmers in the family insisted that their farms be paled in comparison to the original Diversity Dairy that Grandpa and Grandma built. It was displaced in World War II by eminent domain decision that created what is now sits as Big Pasco on the Columbia River. We grandkids heard stories of the productive dairy, poultry, truck crops, and gardens. We saw yellowing photos of the ancient farm delivery truck and heard the tales about young Uncle Wallace delivering milk, eggs, vegetables, and to customers in early Pasco. We also wondered about the stubbed finger on Grandpa's one hand and only partially disbelieved the stories saying they'd been made into sausages at the slaughterhouse where he once worked. With our eminent domain payment for the Diversity Dairy, Mom and Pop bought more land on the Columbia on the west end of town. They semi-retired on a couple of acres with that purchase, with the bulk of the acreage split between the two farming sons. They built a unique flat roof southwestern style stucco house surrounded by extensively landscaped gardens. The house seemed massive to us as little kids. It had gleaming hardwood floors. It had a fascinating swamp cooler air conditioning shaft where we would stand under in the blast of chilled air when we went to visit on hot days. Pop had his woodworking shop in the basement, and Mom had an arboretum overlooking the Columbia River with both rare and common flowers, all verdant and vibrant, at the end of the living room. Mom knew her plants and flowers inside and out. Her children continued to accept cuttings for the respective gardens from the moms for many, many years. Pop was always interested in progress and technology. He watched the dams get built and the development of Hanford, the Columbia Basin, with great interest, and shared detailed observations about plants and weeds, insects, climate change, weather, and the river with any of us grandkids who stopped long enough to listen. He had a well-deserved reputation for keen observation, insight that showed up in his unfailing ability to pick the best watermelon in a bin for the grateful customer. Additionally, he could do most anything. When our farm on the river was displaced by another eminent domain decision, and this was on Lucille's farm, we built a new house on the 20 acres that we bought. Pop built all the reduced height kitchen cabinets because Mom was so short. They were built to fit the petite mother and included a space-saving whirl shelf in the corner, we now refer to as a Lazy Susan. He built all the bedroom cabinets, drawers, along with the kitty car and other wooden toys for the boys, which we used extensively and still remember fondly today. Pop's place was in an oasis high on the bank overlooking the river. He kept a small boat down below and went fishing between semi-debilitating bouts of shingles. Both Mom and Pop weeded and maintained their manicured grounds. Summers found them hosting family gatherings around the outdoor kitchen that Pop had built, where he flipped all the burgers you can eat from multi-generations of the family. When I look back, the visual that comes to mind most is Mom and Pop in their respective chairs, tethered to their small TV by individually controlled hearing aids. Mom had a small but very alert dog in her lap, and Pop had a warm, welcoming smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye, as always. Another one. Grandpa was born in 1887, only months before his father, and moved west. Oh, that one's already done. Sorry. Okay, the final part. Imagine, if you will, what their life was like, what they witnessed. Grandpa lived to pass 100 years old. Grandma passed in her 80s. Grandpa traveled by train across the country while some were still traveling in covered wagons. He witnessed 2 world wars, inventions of automobiles, tractors, airplanes. He then witnessed spaceships and the moon landing, all in one man's lifetime. Can you even imagine? He eventually overcame his fear of flying and took 2 trips to Europe with Uncle Bill and thoroughly enjoyed it. Grandma and Grandpa loved to travel, and they made many sightseeing trips around the West, especially in the Northwest, often with a grandkid or 2 tagging along for adventure. Many of you in this room knew Fred and Lura, mostly Grandpa Fred. His Harris produce stand on the west end of Court Street passed on through 3 generations. Grandpa never wanted anyone to go hungry. In his early years, after the stand was closed, he would load leftovers of the day into his pickup and drive down through the poor parts of town, what some of us older ones refer to the Navy homes, and call out melons, produce, sweet corn, or whatever it was that day. Come and get it. He never asked for a dime. He wanted to know that there was no waste and that there was no one intentionally going hungry. That was Grandpa. Grandma's flower garden was the talk of the town. many professional and novice photographers who would stop and take photos of her flowers. If anyone asked, they got starts for their own gardens. If they were here with us tonight to receive this award, pardon me, and recognition, both would be humbled. They never sought out recognition. They simply lived with honesty and integrity and treated everyone as equals. If there was one thing they might say to us today, it would likely be, love everyone, be kind, be honest, and leave the world a better place than you found it. Thank you for this award.
Wow. Thank you so much, Flo. Imagine walking Sacagawea Park area of where Port of Pasco is, and I had a meeting there yesterday. Not only before the cable bridge, but the Green Bridge was before that. They were here before most of the bridges were here. Walking out to West Pasco where 182 crosses into Richland, how much it would have looked differently, and being able to see how much the community has changed. I learned a lot tonight, and I want to thank you, and I think we all want to thank particularly Flo with the story of where we came from, and we're all excited where we're going to go. So finally, I would like to ask that you all join us in honoring the new inductees. Kara Kalber, Mike Meads, Susan Horton, Mike Poulsen, and Fred and Lura Harris with a final round of applause. We're also going to ask our inductees to make their way over to the reception area so that they can have time, that we can all greet them and talk with you after the program if you want, and learn a little more stories about our community. And I want to thank all our sponsors again tonight, and for all of you attending tonight. This wouldn't be the premier event that it is without your participation. And also I want to reemphasize, and I want to thank Jeff and anybody else who's thinking about contributing the little cards. The little cards, if you want to learn information, it's also going to be over here so that we can get to that $15,000 goal. And so we're just short of our Cultivating Future grant, so please consider making a donation to this wonderful program. Special thanks to the Ag Hall of Fame Committee and countless others who have helped make this evening event successful, including Mercer Estates, Knights Welding, Print Guys, Ellen's Chair Covers, Hello Habanero, and Three Rivers Chef and staff. We all know that you worked very hard to make this evening a success. Thank you. And finally, I want to thank you all this evening. I learned a lot, and I also had an incredible evening. I hope you did too. I want to wish you a wonderful evening, and I'll drive home safely. Thank you.